The following is a conversation with Kelvin O and Justin Kristoff Cale. Kelvin's second time here on the podcast, while Justin Kristoff Cale's very first time. Justin is a high school graduate from Sacred Heart School Ateneo de Cebu under the Accounting, Business, and Management strand or ABM. He plans to take up law in the near future and to become a servant leader not just to serve himself, but his fellow members of the community and his country. Whereas Kelvin O is currently a sophomore in the Suleiman University, currently taking up Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. In this conversation, we dive deep in nationalism, elections, trolls, and my favorite, what is the meaning of life? This is the Consortium hosted by Daphne Jen P. Haralve, and here is my conversation with Kelvin O and Justin Kristoff Cale.
Kelvin, kindly introduce yourself.
Hey, hello guys. My name is Kelvin Yang. I've been to the podcast before, and nice to meet you.
So, Kale, can you introduce yourself?
Um, I'm Justin Kristoff Cale, and I like talking about stuff. All kinds of stuff.
All right. so, so thinking about what for you, what is like the best practices that a Filipino citizen can do that promotes nationalism and I promotes nationalism to the fullest and compassion and empathy towards others. So may I call Kelvin first?
Okay. So what I think that Filipinos should do to support nationalism and help other people is, I think, like your generic, like do your thing for your community, do the everything that's basics. Cause if you're, it's in those things that you can set as a role model, and then which in turn has like that butterfly effect that makes other people do the things that you do. You become a role model. Everyone wants to do what you do, which in turn makes the community and in the country better. But then that's just, do you know, those ideals or things that are really hard, because it's not easy doing those things when you have a lot of other things you need to do also.
I'll get back to you, Kelvin, right after Mr. Christoph's answer. Just
Uh, when I think about it, I return to the learning we got from our time in Ateneo, and that we were brought up to be men and women for others, and that when I go on Facebook and look at, let's say, two friends of mine, both with views that contradict each other regarding the government. Let's say one friend of mine is against the Duterte administration, and another friend of mine is against the Duterte administration. Uh, both these people have their own thoughts and minds, but uh, again, like what could bring these two opposing ideas together? What could bring these two ideas together is the thought of what we learned in being in Ateneo, being men and women for others. So let's say a tragedy happens, like back when Typhoon Yolanda happened here in the Philippines. At that time, I don't recall any politics or anything. It's just that a lot of people came together to help out the victims of these typhoons, and that uh, now, especially during these times where there's COVID, I think that we need to focus a little less on politics, even though that the elections are next year, and that maybe we should help one another in these desperate times. Maybe that could help bring a sense of national unity, because you know the the stronger the bond the people are, then the stronger the sense of nationalism. The stronger the sense of nationalism will be. Right?
yes. So I'll go to it's a mixed question for both Kelvin and Kale. before I'll go to my own answer. So Kelvin mentioned about the butterfly effect, that helping others will improve the community as a whole because it will ripple and help each other. While Mr. Christoph answered that to become a person for and with others. So both are really similar and synonymous to each other. But my question is that what you Christoph already answered it a while ago, that what if there is a divide? So I think Kale already answered it, but I want to go to Kelvin. So what do you think can bring the divide towards to create unity amongst the differences?
Uh, for me, it depends on the situation because there's always gonna be two sides of the coin, but then there's always gonna be some middle ground that they both try to tackle the problem. It doesn't really matter on. I think it's on the how you want to solve or how you want to see the problem. But then in the end, if two sides really conflict with each other, they should really just go to the main point on what they're doing. It's just because, as like for example, as what Mr. Christoph has said, it's they don't like that this administration. They like the third administration, but then in the end, their views are or in their main point, they just want the country to be better. So if you set aside those ideas or those things, you would find a common ground that you just want the country to be better.
All right. So my thoughts on this is that uh I think that to bring and to feel a nationalistic ideal would be three things. Firstly would be voting for your elections, voting for individuals that who will represent you in your fullest ideals and in in your own ideals and the belief of his or her or they's ano of their programs or advocacies to help in within their within their stay as that official role. And secondly would be getting the vaccine. So getting the vaccine does not only help you, it helps other people. And lastly, I thought about this I really l- I thought about this, and the third one would be donating blood, because donating blood, aside from making you healthier by donating blood, because donating blood helps you consider or recognize that you are helping something greater. And then additionally, what amazes me about donating blood is that the person that you might hate might probably save your life. For example, if you as an individual hate a liberal and then you need blood, there's a large chance and there's a large percentage that a liberal can help you, and that can help you to live life again by his or her or they's blood. So which amazes me because the anonymity of the donation would really signify or recognize that this country is a whole and grandeur, in the sense that that donating blood can really help not just you currently by being healthy, but also you in the future, if you get what I mean. And also, one beautiful fact about donating blood is that there are once you need blood, you need a different type of blood for your own specific type. So there's there is the recognition that the person that hates you can help you, while it is very special that the person hates you is really helping you. So you get what I mean. So Mr. Christoph mentioned about Facebook. So speaking about Facebook, what are your thoughts on censorship during Facebook? So we'll move on to Kelvin first because Mr. Christoph is having technical difficulties right now.
Censorship on Facebook, right?
Ah, yes.
Uh, I think it's kind of a thing right now that we live in our society now that is really sensitive to a lot of topics and a lot of things. It's not like before where you can crack a joke or anything, and you can't. It's like you're really walking on thin ice now. So what I see with Facebook side of things is they want their app or company to be still floating in that water. That's why they should have censorships to protect their app, because in our society now everything is very sensitive.
It's funny you mentioned that because I've been suspended by Facebook numerous times in the past before. Uh, um, I won't get into detail what I was banned for, but Kelvin was right when he mentioned that you know our sense of humor might offend uh, a certain group of people that are on Facebook, and that uh, what Facebook is trying to do is try to be more inclusive, but in a way wherein they restrict, like, certain content that offends people, because if there's something that's too offensive, then the that group of people might deter from using the platform itself. And personally, I was I was I was pretty upset that I was banned for a significant number of days for sharing or posting something that was, to be honest, I don't think I deserved it, because there was, I won't go into detail, but I'll just say that there was no crude violence, there was no nudity, there was nothing horrible about it. It was just a meme. But uh, like, I felt like I didn't deserve it, and that it got worse because it was during when back in grade 11, and that I needed my Facebook account to communicate with my class group chats. So it got to the point where I had to make a second Facebook account, and then there was a bit of confusion. And but I just don't. I understand like what Facebook is trying to do, because let's be honest, there are actual content on Facebook that are really terrible and deserving of banning people. In fact, I've had YouTube videos that recommended me about uh, Facebook moderators and how traumatizing the job could be, because they've seen videos of terrorists beheading victims, someone getting shot, like horrible things, and that I truly believe content like that should be restricted on the platform. But uh, my thoughts on this, about from the most vile of things to the most, like, simple of memes that could result getting the same uh, sanction or punishment. Like, I really think that Facebook and other social media platforms should really be more what you call this, perceptive of these type of content, and not rely on uh, automatic bots or their actual or their employees that just put bans to meet a quota or just to rush their job. But
Speaking about creating accounts, you mentioned it earlier, Mr. Kale. So, what are like what I'll start now. I'll start first, then you guys would follow. What are your thoughts on trolls? Once their account gets banned, they create more, and they will create another troll account to troll some more. For me, is that the the weirdest thing about Facebook is that it shows your public image rather than the early days of the internet where it values anonymity. Because back then, believe it or not, I have a feeling that all of you, your Facebook names were Naruto, Sasuke, or XXX something something, because you valued anonymity. But whereas right now, Facebook persist. I know what I think about social media. It persists or moves on to data or value that it is a real person. But the the difficulty about making and creating a Facebook account is that it is so simple to create. whereas it only needs a email address and a phone number to identify if you're willing to create an account and then check the terms and conditions. So that's why there's a lot of bot accounts with weird names and different platforms using the same pictures over and over again just to create malice and destruction or hatred towards the comment section from a different side towards another side.
Personally, I'm trying to be a stoic person, and that when it comes to trolls, before I used to be what you call this? I used to be I used to be the type of person that wants to get into a fight on Facebook or anything. I used to be the type that like to argue about anything. That there's a guy that said something uh, that bothers me or that I know I can argue with. I used to want to just type away and say things, but now I really just don't want to bother with them because that's not the best use of my time. And the way I see it, these internet trolls are like the way I see it. They're basic. There's a basic understanding to them that all they really want is attention. They they bask in the heat of arguments and controversy. Uh, I've seen this a lot in in YouTube comment sections. Even the most simplest comment, such as "nice shoes," and you see 476 replies, mostly from one person trying to just really push something and really wanna just to fight. Uh, I really don't want to bother with that anymore because like life is short and that uh you can do so many things. Why waste your time fighting this this dude on the internet? You could be you could be writing an essay or doing other things more productive than that. Make your parents proud. I mean, I don't think like any YouTube shows doing their parents proud. Well, what's the deal with that? But
Do you think your
anyway,
parents will be proud by combating in the comment section?
Uh, for me, it's like I don't know. Trolls are like those. They exist everywhere. They exist everywhere. Like any social media platform, there's gonna be trolls. YouTube comment section trolls. You have some Facebook trolls. Even in games, there are trolls. Oh god. So I don't. I when I see trolls, I feel sad seeing them because they got nothing better to do than just trolling. But for me, on how to combat against trolls, I guess for sites, I don't know. Maybe they should make the authentication process a bit more stricter or something, so they'll know that it's not a troll or something. But then there's also gonna be data privacy and stuff, which you really can't pry into. So what I really think about trolls is you just don't mind them. If you don't mind them, they're just gonna stop anyway. But then when you see two trolls fighting each other, you just grab some popcorn and eat it while reading the comment section. So like, see this guy
uh,
fighting this guy. So
For me, I think it's like these individuals or these trolls are like really I has really weak social skills, but in real social skills in real life, whereas whereas I think they can practice or feel good and get brownie points out of fighting or supporting in one side, but supporting in one side, which in they can say that my life is fulfilled. I'm doing something really grandeur and really important by battling in the comment section. So speaking about anonymity, so going we talked about Facebook already. So let's go on in the anarchy version of Facebook, which is 4chan,
for
where
for chat,
I think
for
like
chat.
the only rules that are applicable in 4chan are two rules, right? The first rule would be a no pedophilia content in the site, and then the second one is that uh don't I don't post any pornographic content unless if it's in the pornographic, what you call the
Uh,
uh
Red?
porno,
NSFW.
NSFW
Yeah.
NSFW section. So I think those are the two rules only. So with it being the archetypal significance of being a anarchy site. So these are two broad ideals, which is practicing anonymity and then uh practicing practicing public name or public value. So let's talk about let's talk about 4chan now. Have you ever experienced or know any content that you can share about 4chan?
I really venture into 4chan, but um, all I know is that I'd like to quote a friend of mine that 4chan is the birthplace of memes, but that's all I know about like 4chan. But when I do get on the site, I see the most controversial of ideas there. Like, uh, in fact, but there are some interesting threads that can be funny sometimes. Pero the fact that I think this is where like whatever like post that could be banned on Facebook, I think 4chan should be the right place for it because there are people there who could resonate with the ideas. And on Facebook, uh, a 70-year-old grandma that's used to watching minion memes might end up looking at a video of ISIS beheading, and that's just messed up, really. There's no in the internet that could regulate what post gets posted on what site. So who's this? Like, who am I to say that this guy should post this on that site, right?
Kelvin?
So 4chan 4chan. I've never really delved into 4chan. I've only heard stories and stuff, but I don't know. Maybe this is from ignorance. 4chan is like, I don't know, Eric Andre show or something, and where they don't care, where nobody cares. But then where nobody cares, but then when people watch what they do, some enjoy it, or some are the guests that get that get trolled hard. I don't know if trolls want to live. If trolls want to live, they should probably just be in 4chan or something.
So I have experienced 4chan. I have been to 4chan time to time just to check or to see. But my experience on 4chan probably would be I learned a little bit about electrolysis, the production of H2 and O2 because there's a chemistry thread there. But what I go there for 4chan is the craziest part of 4chan, which is Q. So
Oh,
conspiracy theories and stuff that would recognize that these guys doesn't have a life. They're just decoding Q's. They try to decode Q's answer, but you feel it's so far off because there is no contextual background towards what Q says. So speaking about Q, do you think that there would be a Q in the Philippines in the upcoming elections?
um, it's hard to say because in the U.S. there are two major parties, whereas here there are a lot of parties, but uh, well, because I think in the U.S. the Democrats and the Republicans they have really obvious differences in ideas, whereas here, uh, I personally can't see any differences between let's say the Liberal Party and the UNA, the party of was it Jejomar Binay? Like I've been to their websites and I was curious about what ideas they stand for, but it wasn't really clear. All they had were core values, but I mean, it doesn't say that. Let's say Liberal Party, Like it doesn't say that they're 100% for the progress of the Philippines, and that the UNA are for preserving the traditions and practices of the Filipino. Like it's not clear. However, with the case of Duterte, uh, even though like he's not gunning for the presidency, but he might gun for the vice presidency. Uh, I don't think I could see a Filipino version of Q coming, like just showing up and bringing up these conspiracy theories or anything to bring down potential opponents to the idea of a Duterte vice presidency and presidency, because like it just doesn't like sound right. It like I don't know. There's something about the American government where I mean the American election time that made the like where the idea of Q like, just felt more like his presence there. It just felt natural. So, I don't know how to explain, but like uh the bottom line is that I don't see Filipino Q because like not all Filipinos are like very political and stuff. So yeah.
Pardon me, but I don't really understand Q. Q is like a conspiracy theory guy or something like that.
Yes.
Uh,
Q is like they believe it to be a whistleblower in the U.S. government.
I see. So I don't know if something like that. Philippines is if you're gonna talk about politics in the Philippines, there's gonna be sometimes it's like a close open thing where a few people know stuff and other people know stuff, but in the end, most people will just the common civilians, us the people will. It's like some notions that we already know how this system is working, how like what's this person gonna do. It's like we're just really simple. We really know what's the pattern and stuff. So like if something blows up, it's just gonna blow up directly. It's like it's not really hard to keep a secret here, which is because people are transparent and stuff. So maybe conspiracy theories are not really gonna propagate here in the Philippines.
Yeah, I think the Filipinos have the capability and ability to identify which is really which is factual and unfactual. So to to correct my mistake a while ago, QAnon, by the way, according to Wikipedia, is that QAnon, what I said earlier is wrong. So QAnon is a disproven far right conspiracy theory alleging that a cannibal of satanic cannibalistic pedophiles operate a global sex trafficking ring and conspired against former President Donald Trump during his term of office. So that's Q. So moving on, so you spoke about Filipinos not really caring, Mr. Kale. So do you think that not caring, I mean being not political enough to identify which one is right or wrong? Do you think this is a weakness or a strength towards the Filipino people? Weakness in the sense that they can be easily manipulated by people who have forms of authority towards them.
When it comes to not being too political, personally see it uh, as a form of weakness because it doesn't provide a basis for what people like should believe in for their country. Kaya if a person like doesn't believe in free or fair elections, it's just like, oh, we can vote, okay. Like, uh, and if most Filipinos are like that, like they're just indifferent to the idea of voting or any other policies we have as as Filipinos, then it would make it easier for any ambitious government official to exploit that and use authority to empower themselves even more and reduce the liberties of these people. Now, I don't want to one side and the other side because uh they're just gonna clash and that no progress will be made. But what I can say is when people do become political, they should ideas of what the other side has, and that we should come together, form a common ground wherein you know, we could agree on something and push forward. I mean, I think that's basically how our like we have and here who disagree with this law and congressmen there who don't who agree with the law and debate on it. There are changes and eventually it gets passed. So I think that should work for the Filipino people as well. Pero I just want to share my personal view of we should focus on pragmatism over ideology because you know pragmatism is basically we should do what's good. We should focus on what's practical, and like, ideology is it's ideology and it's focused merely on ideas and not necessarily into actions. Like I got that learning from actually just last night when I was watching a video about Botswana because Botswana had a president who turned who turned the country from the second poorest nation to the world into the fastest growing economy in the 1980s, and that if he was able to do that, then surely we
If Filipinos would become more political, I think they would become more critical on the things on what will happen to the country. So what I think is it their ignorance would become a weakness or a strength. I guess it's you have two things as like the less you know, sometimes the less you know the better it is, and then but then you don't really know what's happening. But then if the more you know, you learn things that might not be good or something like that. But then you get to know better. So I don't I think I think what's really best for us in the country is like the people should be more politically engaged. Those they should care, or so we wouldn't really be, like the like kanang pinabahala na attitude or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's really prevalent in our country, especially the ayaw ko na kasi it won't affect me as a whole, and then but actually it really affects you affects you individually and you as a person as a whole. So we mentioned about a current trend right now in Twitter. I'm just checking right now is that send BTS army to Afghanistan. So what are your thoughts and comments on this?
Oh my god, it's
So I'll
trolls,
share.
trolls,
So,
trolls.
so this is a great example. I'll share my screen so that you guys can see. So this is a prevalent example of trolling to the max.
Trolls,
Wait, I'll share the
trolls,
change.org site. So
trolls.
amazingly, 5,787 people have signed the the petition. So yeah, so this is a great example, possibly of trolling to the max. And then what what I get and understand from the updates and the petition details is that they're trying to counter argue on the premise and the practices of the BTS army. So, and I is that they believe that the BTS army proclaims that they are the best in the world. So it's time. This is the details. The one of the comments here in Twitter. Many people claim that the BTS army is the best in the world in the army. So I think it's time to prove that we should send BTS army to Afghanistan to show the world how powerful they are. So I think there is satire and jokes towards that, but thinking about that, how do you identify and how do you develop a line that it's far too much? Or do you think this is a joke that should be taken easily or a joke that should not be mined?
Uh, for me, I think a good basis for it would be, you watch, South Park, right? South Park. If you watch
Yeah.
South
So
Park,
Yes.
South Park is just full of satire, comedy. I think the line where the line is the basis or where the person is coming from. Because if the person is doing this joke out of no malice, out of just pure humor or something, like South Park, it's just for fun. If you get offended, then you get offended. But then our purpose is just to make a joke, you know. So like if Bisaya pa na ang mapikon may mapilde. So like unless it's unless it's out of malice or there's really an agenda just to really piss people off or you know do so, it's like something like doxing or that's not like hacking into something. That maybe that's the line. For me, that's the line. Unless if it's just a joke or if it's just for laughs, then it's okay.
I think like the line should be drawn when it comes to uh offensive comedy is when people start getting like seriously harmed or something. Because with comedy, there's always the intention to entertain a certain group of people, and it's not necessarily there to offend anyone. And like, what I want to say is that if anyone gets offended by a certain piece of content, that's their problem. It's it's not the problem whoever created something satirical, because like his point there was just to make certain people laugh, and if there are certain people who laugh, then there's no point in acknowledging those who are offended. There's already victory in seeing like a certain group of people that you target entertained. And in the case of this BTS meme, honestly, I think it's kind of funny. And like if that offends any like BTS fans out there, then I feel sorry for you. But like, I mean, it's in the name, right? Army. Like, I don't want to sound like a boomer, like explaining a meme, but BTS army. You send an army to defeat a bunch of terrorists. Like that's kind of funny. Like not gonna lie. If however they had like, a different name for the fans of BTS, like uh BTS starfishes or something. That's not funny. That's just kind of cringy. Like you send this BTS starfishes to invade Afghanistan, but the fact that their name is actually BTS Army. Oh, send them in, boys. We go into Afghanistan.
You're like looking at it as like a meme. It reminds me of the pre-COVID time, the one where it talks about World War III with America, and then like the meme about
Yeah.
COD players. It's your time to shine.
Exactly.
It's your
Gen
time to
Z.
shine and stuff like
Gen
that.
Z.
You see, they didn't get offended. They even
Yeah,
went with the flow. They even went with the flow. It's like,
there are a lot of funny
boys,
videos that came out of that meme. I
our
mean,
5-year training has come to this.
like dancing in
Or like
the saffron
jo-
fields.
or like jokes like, oh, okay, pro CS players gonna lose out on the war because there's no crosshair in real life.
Like, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's general.
Yeah.
If it's generally funny to some people, but it might offend the Iranians. But I don't see. I don't see them voicing out anywhere. I don't see them appealing to the international criminal courts or anything. Like a meme's a meme, right? That's like memes are memes.
Yeah,
So
there for fun.
so the good thing about, I think, like, from what I understand and reflected from both of your answers, is that it feels like sometimes a joke, sometimes a joke is probably a reflection or a mirror to your deep side of yourself. For example, it might be that, um for for example, if you get offended by the joke, probably there is something deep inside of you that is lingering or wants more attention to, that you have to take action upon. For example, if you got I'm sorry if you got offended with the BTS army sent to Pakistan, I sent to Afghanistan, I mean, is that if you take it if you take it seriously, it would be you there's there's a least possibility that you're going to Af-
It's
Afghanistan.
like, it's like it's like chances of zero, dude.
Yeah, chances of zero.
I mean, unless you
And
volunteer.
Yeah, unless you yeah, true. Unless you
and then
volunteer.
yeah, and what Mr. Kale said a while ago, there should be a line that should be drawn, which would be, if it really offends someone or hurts a person's feelings, really hurts, I mean, that would be the proper line that should be drawn. So
Yeah, well, I have an example for that.
go
If you
ahead.
say "yo mama" jokes to a guy who lost his mom, now
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's very very harsh.
that's
However, if anyone that tells the joke like had no idea that it will
Mm,
affect a certain person this way, then he should really immediately apologize and
mm,
uh,
yeah, true.
because he had the intention to entertain, but instead caused them damage, and that's when repair should be made. So uh, comedy has its limits, but it
mm.
shouldn't be too limited.
Yes. And the beauty about comedy is that it shows and it illuminates what the actual value in which it portrays. For example, I think Dave Chappelle would be a great answer. So Dave Chappelle made a joke about this French. Dave Chappelle made a joke on, what you call this. Dave Chappelle made a joke on this guy who was allegedly mugged by MAGA individual, I Make America Great Again individuals in Chicago, where he was lynched and was given homophobic statements. But for Dave Chappelle, he saw that as an opportunity to open up that there might be there won't be white Republican individuals who would watch the Empire show, because it's opposite or contradictory to their beliefs and ideals, because Empire is actually a progressive show, so it contradicts to the idea. So now I would like to ask a question on this article posted on that was sent and was shared by most individuals last night, which was Philippines willing to open doors for Afghanistan refugees from Taliban. So many people are going against it because they feel like that it would increase the COVID-19 numbers in the Philippines, and some would say it would it would create a it would increase the population towards our country, and lastly would be that there might be Taliban forces who would go inside the country, instead of being seeking refuge. They would promote or promote or advocate promote and practice their terroristic ideals in our country. So, what are your thoughts and comments on this issue?
I have two sides to this. Well, as I like to bring up my previous statements about ideas and pragmatism. Now, idealism Filipino, we Filipinos are welcoming people. We're people who are happy to have guests in our home. We welcome them with open arms. We smile when a foreigner like comes to our place and enjoys what we have to offer. And when I imagine the idea of the Philippines welcoming Afghan refugees, uh, I'm reminded of the time when Manuel Quezon uh, welcomed Jewish refugees during World War II when they were being prosecuted in Nazi Germany. And I've seen the movie Quezon's Game, and it brought me tears into my eyes because in the end, when Quezon was in New York, exiled from the Philippines, watching footage of Jewish concentration camp prisoners being liberated, he said that he could have saved more, but in the end, he was able to secure thousands of lives, and that was good enough. And that he did his best, and that if we're able to help a certain Afghan family, and in the future, if we see them prosper in the Philippines, that's a good thing, and that we Filipinos should be proud of that. Now, however, if I have to be practical about this, yes, we still have the COVID-19 pandemic, and that we have to deal with this ourselves first before we could help the Afghans, because as the saying goes, we should help ourselves before we help others. Now, it's obvious that we're struggling with it, and that we should really focus on ourselves first. It's not being selfish. It's just that there really are people who are suffering and in need of help from the national government, and that we should focus on our own people first. And that second, uh, what is this? We are a very populated country, and that uh, there are notions saying that the overpopulation in our country is a cause for poverty. However, I like to just counter that by saying that the more people we have, then the more youth we have, then the more potential there is for them to have educated individuals, and that the more educated individuals we have, the better future our country will have. And that if we have Afghan people bring their children here to the Philippines to have better lives, these children will grow up in and learn in Filipino schools, and that if they do decide to stay in the Philippines for good, then they will serve us well, and that it might be a good thing, but at the same time, if the overpopulation theory is true, then we'll have to see with that. And third, the Taliban infiltration it is kind of possible because when Syrian refugees were brought in by Europe, yeah, there were several acts of terrorism, like the ones in Paris, the shooting and of that of that magazine publisher, and then one the nightclub, and that can't be that is possible, and that we already have a fair share uh of insurgencies here, like the ones in Marawi back in 2017, and that the this could be a security concern, but we'll have to see about that.
Um, and for me, I would like to also agree with Mr. Kale with this. There are really two sides on it. If you really want to think about it, really as a country, as human beings, it's hard to choose between to accept and not to accept because they're really having a hard time. But then also we're also having our own problems in our own in our own country. We have to have fight against. We still have the fight against COVID. We also have. It's really, elections coming up. People talks are everywhere. It's really such a turbulent time to do some drastic moves and stuff like that. But for me, maybe it is good to have maybe it is good to have to have refugees in our country, but we can't. Maybe there would be a limit. There should be also other countries. There should be probably many more other countries that are better than the Philippines. Their states are better in the Philippines, but because right now Philippines is still in such a turbulent turbulent time where we have problems in almost every sector in our country.
So, from my thoughts about this is that firstly, the overpopulation. For me, there's no such thing as overpopulation currently in the Philippines. But whereas there is overpopulation in urban cities such as Manila, Cebu, and Davao, and I feel like that it is kind of xenophobic and Islamophobic to tag them immediately that if they're seeking for refuge, there might be Taliban officers who would be joining the refuge. And then nextly for me is that lastly, I mean, is that Afghanistan is too far in the Philippines. I think it's okay to invite them and we should open them with love and compassion to be part of our country because let's give them a choice. Whereas Kelvin already mentioned it earlier about the other countries being open for Afghanistan refugees. I think it is the more loving way and the more compassionate way to give them more choices to see that there is a choice that they can choose in living another life aside from the living a better life not under the Taliban rule. So and what Kale said a while ago about Manuel Quezon opening for the Holocaust refugees, yeah, it is very factual that we should open our arms to victims of extreme circumstances such as a terroristic and ideological group that is ruling a country. And humanity is our race and it doesn't matter on which color of skin, the color of your skin or the race you're from, the religion that you're practicing, but all we know is that love is our language, is our universal human language. So moving on towards to another topic is that scaringly that the elections are coming next year 2022. What are the leaders that you look for this upcoming 2022 that you would vote on?
For the elections, as of now, I don't really have a go to person or go to president. Uh, what I want to do right now is just testing the waters, seeing my choices. I want to see what they plan to do and what they are doing currently, because for me what they do currently would reflect on what they will do on the future. So as of who are my who I want to be the president and vice president and senators and stuff like that, I'm not yet decided, because as of now there's no maybe it's my lack of information. I don't see a clear clear campaigns on what they want to do and any plans on each. It's only saying uh this guy might be the president or this might be the president. Okay, this guy's really running for the president. I just want to know what they want to do and what they're doing now before I want to make my choice.
In my case, for the elections, uh, I, I'm just like Kelvin. I still have no clue who I want to be elected. However, I'd like to just say that uh, the candidate I do intend to vote for should be a candidate with a clear vision and who knows what he or she wants for our country, and that if what he or she wants for the country resonates with me and that I believe is also best for the country, then that's when that certain candidate would earn my vote. I don't intend to vote for a candidate that dances in an ad or shows vague uh, graphics of what the future Philippines would be. But I want them to have a clear vision and just have ideas that make a lot of sense for what we really need right now. And personally, one good thing I can say about the Duterte administration is the plan for the improvement of our infrastructure. It's very clear to me that certain aspects of our infrastructure has been improved, albeit there might have been problems, there might have been a bit of corruption, but it's very clear to me that there was some change. Like the third bridge being built across the Mactan Channel, that is an example of the improvements made to our infrastructure. The second terminal at Mactan International Airport, that's an example. And the various roads that have been improved throughout the city and the rest of the country, those were examples of the Build program proposed by Duterte and possibly other associates of his. Now, any candidate with a firm like with a firm belief that they could achieve something similar to a an infrastructural improvement. Like let's say there's a candidate that could strengthen the military and has a clear plan about it. Uh, a candidate that could revive our nuclear energy aspirations to have a more efficient way of distributing energy, and they have a clear plan about it. I would vote for that type of candidate. But if all they're gonna say is that we're gonna build a nuclear power plant and that they don't really specify the details of it, I wouldn't vote for the person. But if you have a candidate that says we're gonna build a nuclear power plant, we're gonna make deals with China, we're gonna do this and that, we're gonna like improve. They're just really detailed and it's clear, and they're not vague about it. Now that's what I want in a candidate. I mean, who would want that in a candidate, right? So, uh, also, if there's one thing I want to say, like about Filipino voters, I really believe that the COMELEC should just be an organization that facilitates the elections by itself or regulate the candidates from like when to campaign and when not to campaign. But I think the COMELEC should require candidates to be more transparent about their platforms, right? So that the voters will know what they're getting. Because if the voters don't know what they're getting, we're all that's gonna pay the price, not these people that we've elected. So yeah.
The leader that I would aspire or vote for this upcoming election would be for re-election. Firstly, is that I would vote for a leader that has clearly did something to improve our country within from this day towards towards the election, not just focusing on campaigning on their platforms right now, but rather focusing on improving and making it easier for making it easier to handle the pandemic. And whereas for the leader that I would look for is that what Kale said already is that we cannot a leader who has actual plans and not just improvise and just go with the flow, because we cannot live now or forever the effects of the COVID-19 and what has it impacted us as a country. And then thirdly, if Pacquiao is running for president, I won't vote for him because I feel like I vote people voted for him in 2016 as a senator, not a boxer. And I'm checking his records in WBO. From his fight, he became a senator on June 16, June June 30, 2016. From from that date until now, he has three fights, which was firstly on November 5, 2016, Pacquiao versus Vargas, January on 2019, Pacquiao versus Bronner, and on July 20, 2019, Pacquiao versus Thurman, and then his upcoming fight with Yugas. And I think that wouldn't be. I feel like he forgot to realize that he has a bigger duty to do, which is to help the Filipino people and not improve his boxing record. Because what I thought back then in 2016, he gave up on fighting. He gave up properly on boxing already, because we saw the fight of the century between him and Mayweather. And then surprisingly, during his elect after winning the Senate, he suddenly go went back to boxing, and then continued to not to not do his duties as a senator. And then I think that is a great example, or a pinnacle example of not getting everything at once, because you cannot focus two things or many things at once, but rather you should focus on one thing. And then for Pacquiao during this time, I think he should be focusing on helping or developing bills that can help our country revive and regrow, and then rehabilitate our country to what it was meant. And I'm not saying also that Pacquiao is not a good senator. He has actually done great bills that was passed in Congress, and what was passed in Congress and on the Senate. And the one bill that I would really recognize and commend him for doing is that the Iglesia ni Cristo founding anniversary. But right now, I don't really see him as a good president or a vice president for a country. Imagine a president running a country, then being absent just to practice boxing. So that is really sad and disheartening to the Filipino people.
Basically, what I remembered from Pacquiao is that his first time running into politics was because of the people in Jensen that wanted him to become a congressman. With him, for him, with the lack of knowledge, or like as his out of his pure intentions, he ran and he won. And then now it's just like people are telling him to, okay, okay, since you won being congressman, you can run for senate and stuff like that. So like as Pacquiao would be like, okay, 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 maybe if him running, it's like really good for the country. Yeah, yeah, and stuff like that. But then he doesn't really know what he's going to do, which is kind of also the sad part.
Yeah, I feel like he was just forced to do it. But yes, you were right totally that he might have the heart to serve the Filipino people, but he doesn't have actions or the actions to do or properly help them through the Senate. And then aside from that, the most prevalent case right now is the DOH scandal. So what are your thoughts and ideas on this?
I don't know. It's it's weird. Little.
Mm,
It's it's too. It's like how how. That's all I can say.
mm,
How
how?
how.
That's well for me personally. I'm not surprised, but at the same time, it's very very disheartening
Mm,
because that money could have been used and invested into our healthcare system, and it could have been
mm,
used to help hundreds of people. And
mm,
at this point, there are a lot of lives
mm,
gone, and that they could have been saved if the money was
mm,
properly used. But uh, whatever reason for this discrepancy in the DOH, it cost not it cost us not only taxpayer money, but it cost us many lives, many Filipino lives, and that it's very disheartening to see. And I think that this is something we could learn from and
Mm,
apply during our elections, and that any candidate that that has the potential to strongly, uh, renovate and improve our the different departments and services. No, then this type of scandal is something we should learn from, and it shouldn't be taken lightly. No one should be indifferent about this because every single Filipino, whether you're old, young, or a child, we're all paying taxes. Because if you're a child and you go buy a chocolate or something, you're still paying your value added tax. That goes to the government. When you're young, you buy something from Shopee, one way or another, that a piece of that is taxed and it goes to the government. Whether you're old, you're buying your medicines, it's taxed and it goes to the government. Every Filipino is affected by this type of monetary scandal, and that we should all learn from it. Anyone who could vote should learn from it, and that what happens in the election will affect every single one of us for the next 6 years, for the better or for worse, and that
mm.
this with this learning, we should make sure that the next 6 years should be for the better.
The good thing about the Commission on Audit is that they are autonomous and separate from the three branches of the Republic of the Philippines, which is obviously stated, and then they can bring up or help illuminate the possible corruptions and scandals that are present. And I feel bad for those people who had lost their businesses and their jobs during the pandemic, and that could have helped them improve their lives and not suffer what they're suffering right now.
I think when I look into it more, I guess this is more of a when since it's out of the bag now, I guess it's really a time for a case of transparency where everyone should be where the government should be looking to everything that has happened or like since the audit we check everything to see how they misuse that amount of money that that I don't know how, but then since we have the commission of audit that supports us, that shows us, I guess, I think we the people should also have the right to know what happened to the money that they were spending it with. What were they spending it with? Because
And obviously they should be accountable. For those people who took the money, they should be accountable and should be accountable for their mistakes on what could have been or could have helped other people who needed it the most. Sadly, like what people should realize is that the atrocities of dictatorships and authoritarianism and draconian practices isn't that really long ago. A great example would be Nazism by the leadership of Adolf Hitler, Maoism by Mao, and communism by Stalin. And a still present sadly and then a still present one would be the dictatorship and then the draconian practices of North Korea. And I think without intervention, probably Taliban would be would would turn to become one of history's atrocities. And that's a sad reality if there are no interventions or help that can help our brothers and sisters and fellow individuals in Afghanistan to live and to have a better life. So now, with this deep reflection on life and on living life in the worst and then the best parts of life. So I would like to ask Kale and Kelvin. So For Kale is that what is the meaning of life, and then for Kelvin is did your meaning of life change? So maybe start with Kale.
Well, there is a saying now that you only live once, and personally, I think that's very false because we have us. We've had the past, we have the present, and the future. Every day is for me is the beginning of a new life, and that what contributes to the value of it is how you spend your time living out that life. If you spend one day doing good things for your family and the next day, biking, helping improve your health, then that I believe is living life to the fullest. For as long as you know you're doing good things for yourself and for others, um, that's what I believe is the meaning of life. Uh, in my case, I'm living my life in a way where I'm personally helping myself because I'm medically diagnosed as malnourished and that I want to help myself so that I could be able to do things in the future when I can help others like my friends and people who require services. And yeah, that's basically it. Live life not once, but live life as many times as you can and do good things.
uh, for me, the meaning of life, I guess maybe some part as of last time, the meaning of life changed for me. I guess life is, I don't really know. It's like there's some part of me who says it's about living in the moment, but and there's also some part of me that tells me that it's not also only about living in the moment, it's also about thinking about the future. Maybe now maybe it should be the combination of both, where you should live now and think about the future as well, because as is, as it's standing now, especially in our country, that we need to tackle the problems that we have now, which especially like COVID and the our economy and stuff like that. It's also about think. It also strikes me as a university student to also think about my future. What happens after COVID, after everything, after if the economy resembles. It's also about thinking about the elections. What will happen if we choose this person or that person for 6 years? I guess life is the meaning of life is about living in the moment and for the future. That's all I can say.
I think that is so right to live in the present and then to compare who you were yesterday and to become a better person on the next day, and that will be an incremental increase and to become a grandeur and to say that your life is fulfilling. Now to end, I always end with a poem. So would you mind I would read the poem?
Go ahead.
So More Dangerous Air by Margarita Engle. Newsmen call it the Cuban Missile Crisis. Teachers say it's the end of the world. At school, they instruct us to look up and watch the sky, the Cuban curse sky. Search for a streak of light. Listen for a precinct streak, the whistle that will warn us. As poisonous A bombs zoom up close. Hide under a desk. Pretend that furniture is enough to protect us against this perilous flames, radiation, contamination, toxic toxic breath. Each air raid drill is sheer terror, but some of the city kids giggle. They don't believe that death is real. They never touched a bullet or seen a vulture or made music by shaking the jawbone of a mule. When I hide under my frail school desk, my heart grows as rough and brittle as a slab of wood that fails to protect me from reality's groom. So, thank you so much, Kelvin and Kale, for joining my consortium. So, thank you, everyone. Thank you for have reached this far, and I hope that you guys would keep safe.